Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series, Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. In this series titled Success Looks Different, Shane Fast of Renew Painting will be discussing his surprising journey from ministry to painting and the many lives he has impacted, lessons he's learned, and counterintuitive approach he has taken along the way. It is a 6-part series. In episode 1, Shane discussed his unlikely path to painting and his bold vision for the future. In episode 2, Shane covered initial hurdles he faced, both personally and professionally, and how he overcame them. In episode 3, Shane dived into his decision to professionalize and scale and the action steps that allowed him to do so. In episode 4, this episode, Shane will lay out Renew Painting's core values and how that impacts every aspect of the business. In episode 5, Shane will walk through his counterintuitive approach to hiring and sales and the hedgehog and flywheel his business runs by. And in episode 6, the final episode, Shane will break down his transition to a hybrid model as well as his vision for the future of Renew Painting. If you want to ask Shane questions related to anything in this podcast series, you can do so in our exclusive Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook. Just search for Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook and request to join the group. Or type in the URL, facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. Again, that URL is facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. There you can ask Shane questions directly by tagging him with your question so you can see how anything discussed here applies to your particular painting company. Welcome back, Shane.
Good to be back.
I feel like in the past episodes, we've been kind of pushing the values. Like they keep wanting to come up. We're like, whoa, we have an episode on those. So I'm excited to be able to fully unleash.
Jump in. Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess your path, we've gotten into unlikely path, right? From ministry to painting, kind of how you were resistant to it at first. And now we've gotten to the professionalizing, scaling. We're leaning into the business. Was the values, I guess let's figure out what your values are and maybe how they came to be, whether they were sort of developed over time, whether you decided to start with them. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So we have 5 core values. They definitely evolved over time. There went from various, I don't even remember what some of the first iterations are. But I know now at some point I kind of try to turn them into more action statements, and then just straight nouns. And whether that's, a best practice or not, it's kind of worked for us to be able to articulate them and to be able to kind of get our heads around them a little more. So, so I just rattle them off. So we have champion integrity and responsibility. So champion integrity and responsibility, passionately pursue excellence, dare to innovate and take risk, confront adversity with resilience, embrace humility, and serve others. So those are kind of our 5, and we'll chop those up some, so I won't repeat them now. But yeah, I mean they're a little wordier because we went with the action statements versus you be just like, whether it's be responsible or be accountable or which there's nothing wrong with those things. It just something clicked for me when I read an article one time about them being action, and I thought I can understand that more. I kind of think that way a little more, and so that's how we use them.
Yeah, I like that, man. The like integrity is a pretty common one, right? Integrity or hard work or things like that. But what does that always mean? I think taking a noun and rather than being integrity, champion integrity and responsibility, I'm sure there's kind of teaching in depth to that. And I think it does reframe it when you make it an action.
Yeah, and I would say that's the one we cheat on a little bit, and doesn't go, we just snuck one verb in there and kept the two nouns that everybody loves to use. And we know that we laugh when we use that. The rest of them have a little more of a oomph to them. But it does help. I mean, we just had a situation this morning where I'm talking to both our project managers are newer within 6 months, and not to necessarily to organization, but to their roles, one to the organization. And so, we're going through this scenario where we have a callback, and some of it's legitimate, all of it's legitimate. Some of it we should have documented as previous damage or previous, like, hey, your ceiling already has this really wavy cut line and we're not painting the ceiling. We
Yep.
didn't do a good job documenting that, right? So that's an example of where, we didn't talk through this core value as we are navigating the situation. But as I'm talking to our project manager, I said, okay, well, that's on us. I quoted it. We had two people went for a pre-job walk. The painter painted it. Nobody documented this issue, previous issue. So that, like, we have to take responsibility that we dropped the ball there.
Yep.
And so what does it then look like to make this customer happy? Not saying, oh, well, it was like that way before, so we're not going to fix it, because, well, we also want to be people of integrity who say, hey, we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to leave you with a good product. And yeah, we have the PCA standards, and there can be latent defects in some of those things. But let's be honest, if you hire somebody who's supposed to be a premium company, you expect a clean ceiling line, even if the one before there wasn't that clean, right? So that was on us to do that. And so I guess that's an example of where that having that integrity and responsibility and saying, hey, we're not going to weasel out of it. We're not going to lie, which is interesting because the feedback at our team meeting just a little bit ago was that, Nate said, well, I think when I first started talking to him, he thought I was just going to try to get, not cop out of everything, but kind of had that expectation that I was going to try to make an excuse or whatever. And so when I said, hey, yeah, we should have fixed that or we should have straightened this out. And then when he asked about something else, I said, well, let me show you on these previous pictures where that was. He said the whole demeanor started to change when he realized, yeah, we have documentation that supports some of the stuff was pre-existing, but also I'm going to acknowledge that we could have fixed some of the things too, and let's find a middle ground there, to work it out. And so those things kind of play together in my mind. We want our employees to be okay to say I failed. So if there's times I still do all the sales, or 99% of them, and so there's times when I have to look at our project managers and say, man, I did not catch that. Or I just dropped the ball. I totally missed that. I didn't ask him this, or I should have done X. Or frankly, there's sometimes the way I write the quote. I've literally had times, this is years ago, but when I sent a quote to somebody, I didn't include the cost of material in it. And that's obviously totally on me. So I have to
Yep.
accept that and say, hey, when we job cost this, it's going to look a little different because I totally dropped this ball. That was years ago before software and everything. But there's just places where it's okay to say, man, I'm going to take responsibility for my mistake. And I'm not getting fired for it. In fact, I'm more likely to get fired if I don't take responsibility.
Right.
So we want our people to have those values.
I love that, man. And I think it presents a good opportunity for your team to show that you're not perfect and how you're taking accountability for it and that it's okay that you made a mistake. And I think I have a pretty good idea of kind of how I would view this, but I'd like to get you to elaborate on it. How do you know when, okay, the client comes and says, "Hey, I expected XYZ," and you don't necessarily want to just kind of, cater to everything, right? Sometimes there could be scope creep or things that maybe are a little bit unreasonable versus, well, we are a premium company and they expected a certain thing, so we're going to make sure that we take care of them. Where's that line?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it is a case by case basis. We are human, we have emotions, we feel things, right? And well, that's a redundant statement. We have emotion, feel, but you know where I'm kind of going with this. So if it's a client that is so it's a lot of it, so we are not objective, I guess is what I'm getting to.
Sure.
So the way this interaction goes with a client will probably determine a decent amount of that, right? So are they respectful? Are they acknowledging our hard work and those kind of things? That goes a long way to, it's just like if you were to return something in the store and you're a day late on the 30 days or something like that. If you come in there and you're a total jerk and you start yelling from the top, you're probably not going to get the outcome you want. But if you're kind, you probably at least get a store credit, right? So I think that matters. I mean, just being blunt, that interaction matters. Um, that being said, we want to do as much as we can and we want to stretch it as far as we can within reason. So there are times where we have a situation, they say, hey, they thought we were going to paint this, and it's clearly not in the scope of work.
Right.
And the project manager might say, you know what? I'm up to date on job costing and this one's looking really strong. Do you want to just throw that door in? And there's times when we just can't because we've already stretched ourselves. The quote was really thin and we knew that going in, and then they want to add da 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 da, and we have to give them a price.
Sure.
So I think it definitely depends on, where we stand on the job, how we've performed. Have we done everything to the expectation that we promised, and have we done it in the time we promised, or are we a month late because it was raining and our exteriors were backed up and we're just now getting to your house? And that to me is a place where we'll give a little more ground and try to create a win for them because they've been very patient for us to get there when our schedule has gotten totally jacked up. That's another place where I think we're a little more flexible because we want to create a great experience for them. And if they've had to wait a lot longer than they expected, maybe we can, you know, kick something back to them in that way that brings them a little joy.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, that was empathy that you just, talked about with regard to the client saying, hey, they've been patient with us. They waited this time. Because I think so many business owners and people would say, hey, it rained. I can't control that. They know that I can't control that. It's an exterior project. We did tell them when we set the date that this is tentative and dependent on the weather and kind of, the schedule might shift. But you're essentially saying, well, I didn't control the the weather. I didn't dance to the rain gods and it rained and it got pushed back. But I also understand it impacted their life, whether it was my fault or not. And what I'm accountable for as a company is their experience. And so I'm not obligated to necessarily offer additional, scope of work or anything like that to try to make their experience better. But it would do a better job at my mission of providing a phenomenal experience from a premium company for them. And I think most company owners aren't thinking in that kind of 3D level, right? That level of depth. It's more, well, this is the scope of work. We told them it's dependent upon the weather conditions, that this is a tentative scheduling date, and therefore they are not obligated to receive anything else. And I think that kind of myopic thinking really restricts growth.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is. I mean, I will say it's hard. It's hard to give something away for free. I mean, it
Yeah,
just is. So if you normally target even 20, let's say just use this low number, $20. Let's say a crawl space door is $20 because it's in good condition. All I got to do is slap a quick coat of paint on it, which most of them are going to be more than that, but let's just say 20. Then if I say to Ryan, which we did last week, hey, you know what? Just that needs to be done. It's going to be an eyesore if you don't. They're having a party here this weekend. I know they're saying they're going to do it themselves. Just hit it while you're here. If that's literally $20 we just gave away, you know. And but I did actually, it's funny hearing until we're having this conversation, I didn't think about that. Because it just at the time it feels like the right thing to do because it's not gonna kill us, it's not gonna take a ton of time. We can work it in. That's the other thing is do we have time to squeeze something in within the schedule we have too?
sure.
Because sometimes people will say, can you do X, Y, and Z? And even if they want to pay for it, there's times when we have to just schedule a return trip because we're already scheduled to be somewhere else, and so to add on would be challenging there. So
Yeah.
I think that it kind of goes in a number of different directions there.
No, for sure. You have to calibrate. And I think there is a tendency for some companies and some leaders to be somewhat overly virtuous or kind of falling on their sword too much for their clients. And if you are trying to serve the community and serve people at a high scale, but you're not able to profit sufficiently because you're giving away too many things for free, then that actually restricts your ability to hire, restricts your ability to market. And so you end up paradoxically serving fewer people, not more people, because of the fact that you're not running the business in the most efficient way possible. And I think I also want to throw out another thought here, Shane. I don't know if you have looked at it this way. And you want to be a little careful because you want to make sure you're doing things for the right reason, but there can be win-wins. So if it's hey, it's a $20 door, don't make it contingent. I think it's kind of unethical, a little shady, but don't make it contingent on it. But there's an opportunity to potentially get a review, right? Because you're going above and beyond and providing this experience. And it could just be, hey, we really hope you were happy with your service. I want to let you know, even though that door wasn't on the scope of work, my guys, they just noticed, hey, it didn't really look right. We know you're having this party. So we went ahead and threw it in. Just want to let you know that. Let's do the walkthrough. Okay, awesome. And then go through the review generation process unrelated to that, but you've planted that seed, right? So now you're
Yeah,
saying, hey, I actually have this card, this QR code. If you think we deserve it, I'd love to get a review. It helps us serve more people in the community. Is there anything you think maybe we can improve right now? Make sure we meet your no. Okay. Also, can I actually walk you through this? I mean, the review is likely to be a very positive one at that point, and a positive 5-star Google review is worth a lot more than $20.
that's very true. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Right.
And yeah, and it goes back to what you're saying. You're not doing it exactly for that reason, but we want to create a great experience,
Yep.
and we hope that a great experience would lead to a great review. So,
And then
all
I
part of
think
it.
it's important too as a company owner. So I think about this as a marketing agency. There are a lot of marketing agencies that are kind of shady, right? I mean, we don't have a phenomenal reputation as an industry. Marketing agencies don't have a phenomenal reputation, and for good reason. Contractors don't have a phenomenal reputation, and for good
Right.
reason. I'm trying to get a fence installed at my house. It's an absolute joke. I called them Friday. I had two different install dates, one of which is tomorrow. I asked, hey, am I installing tomorrow? They told me to call back on Monday. They don't know. Like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, just call us on Monday. Okay, call them on Monday. They tell me
Oh,
that
you call them.
I called them. Yeah, they said, hey, I don't know. This other person will know. Just call them call on Monday. I call Monday, right? Then they're like, yeah, I don't know. Call at 5. This is for tomorrow,
Oh
right?
my God.
This is I call back at 5, so I have to call again. And they're like, did you take off work or something? Yes, I took off work or something because it's this, I want to make sure they're not hitting the French drains. Like I've set aside all this time and I have zero idea whether they're coming tomorrow. They might be coming Thursday. There's some other scheduled date like 2 weeks from now. And they're like, yeah, we're still learning the software. Just call us later. I mean, the experience is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. So when you're giving away extra work, when you're going above and beyond and you're doing the right thing, getting a 5-star review, it's almost irresponsible and negligent of you not to do that because when you don't do it, you're opening the door wider for your competitors who may tell the person to call back later 12 times to figure out whether them taking off the full day of work was worthwhile or whether they need to maybe take off another 4 days at various intervals to try to catch the guys on one of the days. Right? You're saving them from a negative experience because if you do the work that you're going to do a good job. And so I think really, truly good business owners, virtuous business owners who actually want to do the right thing, sometimes are too passive in their marketing. They're sometimes too passive in
Hmm.
procuring the reviews. They feel greedy or selfish or, well, if they'll do it if they want to, and they're not really going to put in that structure. But all that you're doing is letting more people choose bad contractors,
Yeah, it's
which you
fair.
shouldn't be doing.
Right.
I don't know. That's me kind of going on a soapbox, but I think I do feel passionately about that.
I think that's real. I think that's I mean, to me, we're crazy if we don't chase the reviews. So we have a process that stalks those down,
Yeah,
and hopefully gets them. We don't always get them.
sure.
But yeah, we definitely try. So
Love it. So that is champion integrity and responsibility. Passionately pursue excellence. Was that your second one?
that is the second one. Yeah, passionately pursue excellence.
What does that look like?
So it's interesting. We've gotten feedback very regularly, we have two of our painters that love to sing. And so this is cool. Yeah, I know it's so funny you started this, but they'll say, they were just the most delightful people to be around and they actually liked each other, or he just sang and he seemed like he was really enjoying what he was doing. And so the reason we say passionately pursue excellence, so there's a we because we want people to work with passion. So I'm mixing joy and passion together a little bit here. Okay.
Sure.
Admittedly, because there wasn't really a great way to work. We were like, how do we work joy into this? And we couldn't quite, figure it out in a core value. But there's usually, not always, but usually, if you enjoy something and you're going to be more passionate about it, you're going to want to be better at it, right? So my 13-year-old wants to be, he loves football. He wants to be a receiver. So he is a phenomenal work ethic, in my opinion, for any teenager, but especially a 13-year-old, to where he'll go in the backyard and bring a friend, and just for a couple hours, they're doing drills and running routes, and he's pouring sweat. So, I mean, it's literally
That's awesome.
legitimate work, but he's having so much fun, and he's not necessarily smiling the whole time, but I can tell he's enjoying himself. I ask him afterwards, how was so and so, whatever. Oh, it's great. Um, so we want to pursue excellence, but we want to do it with a passion and a joy and that mindset that the end goal is not just I'm just going to be good at something to be good at it, but it's I want to aggressively be learning. So I love it when our people say, I was watching this thing on YouTube and I want to try to do this way now, or something like that. I love that. We want them to be figuring out new ways to do things. We want them to be trying to get better at what they do. I'm okay. I like for them to be frustrated sometimes. Like, I can't quite get this. And it's okay, let's figure out how to turn the corner on it. Let's get there, let's get better. They want to be better. And so excellence could be a skill, it could be the end product, it could be the fact that you're 5 minutes early to the job site versus just rolling in right at the 7:30 time frame. Excellence could be, one one little strain right now is we have a 2 week notice on our PTO, and it's probably my fault as a leader, but we consistently violate that because I'm like, oh, she just found out about this. I mean, all of them have kids, so it's notoriously, oh, I just found out they have this, or just told me this kind of thing.
Hard to say no to that.
It is, and we don't
I know,
usually.
I know how that is.
We will say, can you work a little later this day? We had the schedule set. Can you work a little later here? Can you flex here? Can you work 3 hours on Saturday? We just don't want to get behind. We've already communicated these customers. We usually figure it out. But even something like that, the next team meeting, hey guys, part of being excellent is give us that 2 weeks, as much as you can, give us that 2 weeks heads up, because it still can be something simple as that, to something as big as, hey, you need to get better at your drywall, or your lines need to be, they're an 8 out of 10. Let's get to that 10 out of 10, whatever that looks like. So we just want our people, and that goes for myself with the sales. I've been telling people, if they ask me what I'm learning and growing in, it's like, I want to be the best freaking salesperson I can be, because it's all been intuitive and natural. I'm not even using the processes we created. So I've got to, if I'm going to hire a salesperson by the end of this year, I've got to be the best true salesperson to understand how to do it. And my first thought was, I've got to know how to do it to teach somebody else. Now I'm just excited about getting better at it. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm pumped about it. I'll tell Hannah, she I had like 4 or 5 quotes in a row a week or so ago, and I was asking her a quick question. I was like, okay, tell me what's the strategy in closing this guy? Is it speed? Tell me what his pain points are. And so as we're hanging out the phone, she says, okay, go make it rain. And that made my day, because I'm so competitive. It's like, I am like, I close
ABC,
the last
always
one,
be
I'm closing
closing.
this one, we're closing the next one. So,
I love it,
um,
man.
so yeah, so it goes for all of us, whether it's marketing, whether it's how our website looks. I mean, anything we see, we're trying to be better at. It can be the smallest thing. We use the word proposal instead of estimate, because it's kind of a hook we have in our sales process. But we realized on the website it said request a proposal, and we're like, nobody's gonna know what that is. So hey, we got to switch that. We got to fix that.
Sure.
So it's every little thing we will be excellent in.
Yeah. Yeah. The Jason Phillips is big into that through contractor freedom. He calls it an accurate written proposal, not an estimate. There's no
Yeah.
estimate about it. This is the proposal. It'll be the same price. The which I think is really good. I think it's a huge step to professionalization and differentiation. The yeah, I think a lot of what you said there is really interesting. One of the things we've done at Painter Marketing Pros is we basically will kind of cross train. So we'll have these meetings where someone from our social media team or someone from our ad team or SEO team will essentially train the rest of the entire rest of the company on what they do. And
Mm.
what we find it does is it helps everybody understand kind of the company overall. It entices a lot of curiosity, and then some people actually want to cross train. Maybe they're in one department, but they started it, start to develop some affinity for another department. And we have cross, kind of like lateral movement opportunities. And culturally, it is a phenomenal thing to do. So I think my thought is companies should lean a little more into that. Like, okay, a painter never has done sales, thought about sales. They might be curious to understand a little bit about sales scripting, sales psychology process, right? They might want to know a little bit about finance. Some companies are more transparent with their books and whatnot than others, but yeah, that's something we've seen in terms of educational opportunities and growth opportunities. That's been very impactful.
Mm. That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Um, cool. And then bonuses for, bonuses and incentives and comping, different certifications, different learning courses. There are a lot of online learning opportunities in digital marketing. So we'll work to train up the team and then actually reward them for taking action, right? And kind of
Mm.
going on these different courses and trajectories. But I think you can really apply that to any business. And I think when they see when employees see their employer or the company investing not only monetarily, but they've actually gone through the thought process of, hey, what might they find really rewarding? What options could we provide them with? What growth opportunities as opposed to, hey, here's more money, here's a bonus, okay, here's a promotional opportunity, but actually throughout the whole thing you could be growing. So I really like this second value, passionately pursue excellence, and I agree that excellence can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool,
Absolutely.
man. Your third, my handwriting's terrible. What is your third value?
Dare to innovate and take risk.
Okay. Yeah, I think you were kind of flying at that point and I was starting to lose it. All right. Dare to
No,
innovate and take risks.
dare to innovate and take risk.
Talk to me about
Yeah.
that one.
So even back in the ministry days, there's a small little book, the one is like literally small books that was super thin, about the size of a bigger wallet or a big phone. And I think it's called Innovation's Dirty Little Secret. A pastor out in California wrote it. And I remember a number of things stuck with me. And it also helped me realize that everything we are having to do in order to figure out how do we enter into this impoverished community where there's a lot of challenges coming from the outside. We don't want to be mistrusted. Everything we did was innovation. We were just trying to kind of keep coming up with ideas of how to enter in and to care for people. And so that innovation idea has stuck with me for years now, for well over a decade. And that being said, again, if you just the word innovate, well, what does that mean? How do you, so when we kind of came up with a dare to innovate and then tagged the take risk on it, it gave our people the freedom to try things. And that was a big deal to me when I realized that, well, I guess there's two things to that. One, as a leader, it's a huge deal at that point. If you're going to have a core value that says, I want innovation, then you actually have to say yes a lot more than you say no. So when people have ideas, that's one of the things I learned from the book was if you keep saying no to their ideas, they're not going to come up with any more ideas.
Mm,
So that's one thing. They have to feel safe to have ideas, especially if they're against the grain. They have to be willing to push the envelope, and you have to give them freedom to do that. And when they fail, you actually have to find a way to celebrate that failure. That sounds weird,
sure.
but you're you're celebrating the attempt, right? So you're essentially acknowledging, hey, you did what we asked and you tried something new. So
Yep.
if a painter says, I want to approach the job this way, and I think, I don't think I do it that way, my default is going to be to say, let's go for it. Even if I wouldn't do it that way, even if I wouldn't approach this way, or I wouldn't spray this, or I would, whatever it is, and I'll just say, okay, let's go for it. You run it. And a lot of times it goes great, and sometimes it doesn't, and I'm never going to say, well, I didn't think that was going to work. We have to say, hey, like that was a great run
I
at
knew that
it.
was a stupid
Learn
idea.
from it.
Yeah.
What can we learn from this? There was a few things, even in the I had some examples of this, and I couldn't find my notes, but I jotted down a couple examples even recently where even administratively, I felt like Hannah had done several things that were kind of outside. I mean, they were outside the box. They were not our norm, and she presented them as, hey, I want to implement a new system or process here. And I thought, oh, I guess so. I trust you. That's where I went. I was like, I trust you. I don't really exactly see, like, I didn't, it wasn't a lack of seeing the value. It's like I'm not fully understanding it, but you've been working hard on it, so let's roll with it. And it's been awesome, and I think that is one place that we just want people to be okay to fail. We want them to be okay to try something new, to take a risk. If they see that it's going to be for the good of the company, the good of their teammates, the good of the client, as long as those kind of boxes are checked, then try it. If it's your ego, then that's probably a bad place to start, right? But generally speaking, we have people trying things and being willing to try new things, and they're not under this culture of fear, and it takes a while. We see when we have hired a couple people from other painting companies or that have had painting experience, it takes a while for them to believe that.
Sure.
They're really expecting you to come down on them if something doesn't go exactly right, or the first time. And the same thing with the integrity and responsibility. It's the whole, you go in there, there's a piece of a light, a glass all over the floor, and there's three vanity lights, and there's only two pieces of glass up there. So it's clearly a glass was broken. So I have no idea how it was there. That's we have only experienced that when somebody's come from another company,
Mm.
and it clearly has this like fear-based kind of culture. So in order to have this idea of innovation, taking risks, taking responsibility for things, you have to be okay to make a mistake, and they have to be empowered to know, hey, I can make a mistake, and it's okay.
Yeah,
um
it is sorry. It's I mean Meta back when they were called Facebook, one of Meta's core values is move fast and break things. Obviously there are going to be consequences of that, but Facebook grew really quickly. Facebook is Facebook because they wanted to encourage innovation, knowing that there would be a consequence. And sometimes things being broken it's really not ideal, right? For things to be broken, bugs to happen, whatever, mishaps with the company. But the good of that, all the different innovation and development that's going to happen because people aren't afraid of those mistakes because they just want to continue to move, knowing that speed attracts wealth and speed wins in business. That's huge, right? I think we as owners, we can say, hey, we want to hear your ideas, we want to hear innovation, but employees are naturally going to be a little bit more reticent as a whole. As a general rule, they're going to be a little bit more reticent. They've maybe had negative experiences before. Maybe no company has really empowered them or actually taken their ideas seriously. But they're your boots on the ground. They're doing their different functions, and oftentimes they understand more on a day to day what's happening. And if you empower your team members to come up with these ideas, and sometimes you say, yeah, let's try the idea, thinking maybe it won't work or maybe I don't fully understand it. Sometimes you'll have a killer idea because your team, and then what does that do for morale? It's like, wow, great job, Susie. Now we've implemented this. It's created this kind of cost savings, whatever, however you want to celebrate that team member. You not only have something that's not functioning much better in your business that you wouldn't have had, but you also have a team that feels appreciated and valued. Wow, I've never had a company recognize me in this way, listen to me in this way. I'm not just some cog in their machine. They actually value me. That's huge.
yeah Yeah, it absolutely is.
But everything has a cost, right? So could you try an idea that doesn't work? Yeah, 100%. Could you lose money or XYZ happens? Sure. Facebook doesn't want things to be broken, but they know that the pros of moving fast and trying a bunch of innovation is going to outweigh the cons of the headaches that they're going to have with the broken stuff. It's a
Yeah,
game, man. Business is a game.
it's true. It's absolutely true.
It's cool. Your values are very in depth. I like them a lot. Um, Number four, embrace humility.
Yeah. So, well, we don't have them sequenced, whatever, but confront adversity with resilience would be the fourth one on the list.
Oh, that's the fourth.
Um,
I don't know.
we didn't order them one to five, but that's just how they, came
Got it.
out. So, I rarely operate super linearly, but for some reason in this, my mind's stuck on that order that I
Okay,
have in front of
let's
me.
do it.
So, but the other reason I wanted, because you mentioned business as a game. So, grew up playing sports and competing. And if you play sports, you're going to have adversity. So it's whether you wilt or whether you face it. And I remember being in college and my senior year, we just had one of those games. We weren't we weren't as good as we had been in the 2 years before. We finished like 9-3 or something like that. Um and so one of these games we lost, we probably lost. I don't know the score, but it felt like it was like 100-0. It was probably something in
Encouraging game.
the Oh man, it was awful. It was something in the, where I felt like in my mind, I'm looking at the scoreboard and we're returning the ball. They scored again and they've got like 50 and we've got 15 or something. I mean, there's not, those numbers rarely exist in football. Say 52-14 or something.
This is making me
And
think of like a Berenstain Bears book or something. Teach it, little bear, brother bear, whatever, gets his butt whooped in soccer and
yeah.
teaching some kind of lesson.
Well, I just remember jogging out onto the field, and on the kickoff return team, unless you're the returner, that job sucks, man. Now they've changed so many rules now. I don't know if it's as bad,
Mm.
but I mean, you think about it, and you've got somebody running somewhere between 40 and 60 yards full speed, and you've got maybe 10, and there's just a massive collision. It sucks. And you can break the physics down all you want, we'll take an angle, whatever, but it's a risky play, right? And so at that point, nobody wants to block on that team. And I just remember just jogging on the field and just had this thought that, man, like we're called to excellence. Like I've got to go full speed on this play. As much as I don't even want to be out here right now, like can we just call the game? We're getting destroyed. And and so that's the kind of confront adversity. It doesn't mean I don't even know if I blocked the guy on that play. I don't know how we still lost the game. There was no like big comeback or something like that. So there's no phenomenal ending to the story. We rode the bus home in silence. It sucked. But there was that does kind of epitomize the value, because confront adversity with the resilience doesn't mean you conquer every challenge. It doesn't mean you win every battle. It just means you fight it as hard as you can, right? Like I can, in resilience being, I can get knocked down and get back up. So if we fall forward, that's ideal. If we get knocked down backward, let's get back up and keep going, right? And so we will use that one a lot in conversation and everything. Hey, that was a great example of really confronting adversity. It could be something as simple as, we quoted a 2-quote room. The customer picked an orange. Nobody really caught it. This is a true story that happened about 2 months ago. And we end up putting 8 coats on the wall and they don't want to pay for but three. And so, the project manager has to navigate this. Vivi had to navigate it. Poor thing painted so many coats on that wall. She got the core value award in that quarter because of that job. And I mean, she'd done other things too, but it was literally, there was not complaining. There was not, it was okay. Let me just go. Let me go. Let me keep plugging. Let me keep pressing. And so that's the kind of idea, is that we want to face various challenges, various adversity with resilience. And that's an important one to me too, because I'm a person who at points in the past is, I can be emotional, and so I can get deflated pretty quickly if I'm not careful, if I'm not doing some of the self-care things that you and I talked about a few
Yep.
episodes ago. then that can my emotions can swing and I can be down before I know it. Now thankfully I've learned so much in the past few years that that's just more neutral now. But that also is a value that's important to me because I have to realize that whether it's, I just made a mistake or whatever it might be, or just I'm faced with a hard situation, to be able to keep moving forward, and to not wilt in that moment is a big deal. So it's a big deal for all of us. And we'll definitely sling that core value around a good bit because work's hard.
Yeah,
Business is hard. Things happen. We can't control a lot of things,
sure.
and a lot of things happen to us. And sometimes those things are really good, and sometimes they're really hard. So,
Yeah, the only thing we can control is the input. And one of the things I liked about your football story is we form these neural pathways in our brains with the habits that we create. And so when you choose excellence, right? When you confront adversity with resilience, when you don't allow your own bar to lower just because you're getting annihilated and it's not really going to make a difference in terms of the score, you're forming habit, right? And so because it is going to make a difference other times. And so not
right,
only is there kind of the morality of it, the ethics of it, kind of keeping your word to yourself, which is its own other conversation, but you are building this habit that there are going to be other times when you're not being annihilated, when you might be tempted to lower your bar or not, be quite as resilient when actually you would have been a huge win and you would have fallen forward if you had been resilient, but you weren't because you made too many decisions like on that football field saying, hey, it really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to throw in the towel. And so now you've kind of fallen into this pattern of self-destruction actually.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think it
yeah,
it does, even though it didn't matter on the outcome, it was sort of a training and establishing yourself as the kind of person where you're going to get as many wins as possible because you're just going to show up every time.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. It's that whole. I mean, I've had quotes where I've got three or four in a row, and the very first one they might balk at, for whatever
Yeah,
reason. Oh, I got this price here, or I don't like you for this reason, or whatever it might be, right away. And it's am I stuck, or am I able to name that, to say, like, that's adversity. I'm gonna shift my mindset and go get the next one. Like you said, it's developing that pattern. It's developing that pattern. So, and I think it's really important on the ground too with our teams because sometimes they feel that adversity more than we do even.
hmm
So if I'm not on site and I have an interaction with a customer and I start to realize, hey, there's some challenging stuff here, or they've got some personal crisis going on, and that's kind of coming out on us a little bit. I'm not there for 8 hours, but my team is.
sure.
They might be catching a lot of that the whole, so it's training them with that mindset of, let me keep pushing forward, let me continue to be excellent in spite of this obstacle I'm facing.
Yeah, I love it, man. And then what is your, I don't even want to say it because I might I might be wrong. What is your fifth?
No, you got it. Embrace humility and serve others.
Got it. Embrace humility and serve
Embrace
others.
humility and serve others. Yeah, and humility is not. I heard someone say one time, it was Tim Keller, I think is who it was, and I'll butcher the quote. One brilliant thinker, and he was a pastor in New York City for years, and he said humility is not thinking of yourself. Oh man, I knew I'm gonna butcher it. I think it's something to the effect of thinking of yourself, thinking of others more as much as thinking of yourself less, or it's not thinking less of yourself, is thinking of others more. That's what
Mm,
it is. So humility isn't that false humility of like, oh yeah, I'm not a very good painter, but Ryan's really great. It's that's that kind of like that false, almost like we were raised to not be prideful or something, right? As if that's what humility is, but it's really, hey, how can I serve Brandon in this moment? I know he's facing this challenge, or I know he's going to do this next week or whatever. Like, how could I serve him? And I think that can play out on our team in a number of different ways. anything from Hannah walking up to me, hey, I know you got all this on your plate right now. Is there anything I can take off? Or, you watch on the job site and it's not, hey, you left that your tarp there, or your this, or it's I'm cleaning brushes. You want me to wash yours too? Something like that. So we want to have a servant hearted mindset on the team. And in order to do that, we have to think of each other, not necessarily at the expense of ourselves. We're not denigrating ourselves, but we're prioritizing others. That's the best way to say it. We're prioritizing others. And that also goes for the customer. Kind of
Sure.
to your question earlier about how do you know when to give or extend something. We want to serve people as much as we can. And we believe that we can do that. And we believe we can do it well. So let's go for it. And um, and so yeah, that's what we strive after.
Knowing your company's propensity to serve others and that you're going to have a tendency to probably cater more to people maybe than some other painting companies might do, and that there is a potential risk to that of hurting your job profitability, potentially hurting morale of some team members if they maybe have to stay on site for at a client that maybe isn't the most pleasant. They have to stay on site longer doing something. And have you built that into a qualification process of any kind in terms of your sales? Like, hey, this person seems like they might really lead us down a bad path, so we're going to go ahead and walk away from this project.
We do try to feel it out as best we can. And as you probably have clients like this where everything seems
All of ours
awesome
are
and
perfect.
it can go
Any
to a
client
180.
listening, no, they're all perfect.
The ones you have now, maybe you let go of a couple, right? So you do all that qualification and then whoop, everything just flips when you
Yeah.
start, right? That's happened. There
Yeah,
have been a couple.
sometimes the people who seem the nicest, it's wild, right? Like a
Yeah.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of deal.
Right, exactly. And then there's a few times where I just haven't gone with my instinct. And I've said, no, they really want us to do the job. We should do it. And it's, my gosh, either we just gritted our teeth and got through it, or at one point, I literally walked away from one. And I've only done this once, and we left over $1,000 in material and $1,500 in labor and just said, you don't have to pay us for anything, because I realized that to keep my team there was going to be very destructive. Sure,
Mm.
could we get the job done? Yeah, we could have, but it was not a good environment, for our team our team was not going to thrive in that environment. Um, and so yeah, we definitely do our best to qualify as much as we can, and some of that's is as simple as what other people, it's kind of that, like, we're trying to get after what's really driving them. So if they're just fishing for the bottom dollar, or if they really want a quality product, or if they just need it done fast, not like rushed, but they need it done soon. There's always kind of a driving factor for people, but even in the process of some of those driving factors, you can kind of get a sense for how they're interacting. And Hannah does all our intake, and she's really good at screening that. And she might say, yeah, I just I just didn't have a great vibe talking to this person, and I don't think they're going to be a good fit for us. And I don't even have to have her articulate it. She can if she wants to, and I'm glad to listen to it and help her process it. But I trust her that if she says, you know what, I think we shouldn't even touch this. And there's sometimes when I show up and I'll walk it and I think, yeah, I just don't think we're going to be a good fit for that
Sure.
and that's the phrase we'll use is, we don't think we're the best fit for your project. And we just leave it at that.
So what's driving them? I mean, that's a big part of sales, figuring out the motivation behind it. When you go in thinking you know the motivation for why they're buying something, and you presume that, you tend not to sell as effectively. So kind of understanding the driving force behind it. When you say figuring out what's really driving them, do you guys have that kind of in your scripting, some way to hey, why are you deciding to complete this project now? Or what's important to you in this project? What do you value most highly? Are there certain questions that you ask that kind of tease out that answer?
Man, that's a great question. I would almost, this is embarrassing, I'd have to ask Hannah. She's
Hey,
done such a
you've
phenomenal job with
delegated.
it for the last 2 years. She crushed it. And I know she has some things. I mean, timeline's a big if they have multiple quotes, they mention that, she'll try to draw that out. If they mention it, she'll try to kind of ask questions to kind of get at what they're looking for in multiple quotes. And I would say the highest percentage is going to be people are going to say price, but that's not always really the case. I don't think. I think they want somebody that's going to mesh well with them, at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I need to dig into that a little more.
Yeah. If someone's saying price, they're usually saying value. Some people maybe they can only afford a certain thing, but they could also paint the house themselves. So it's usually more applicable to value and yeah, if you go down that price game, that's a losing game, right?
Right,
Be your
right.
price down. Okay, cool. Shane, so you said something pretty interesting. You said that I forget her name, but you said the woman who had painted 8 coats, you said she won the core value award for the quarter. So do you guys have quarterly awards?
We do, we do. So we've done a couple different iterations. I think at our best, we will have people give them to each other.
Nice.
And they kind of identify another teammate and explain why they would get that award. A little bit a little bit of the gap that I identified there is that our painters don't really know what Hannah is doing in the office. I realized she's going to be left out pretty much perpetually.
She'll never get any.
We don't do something. Or they don't, or they're just kind of thinking of each other. They're not necessarily thinking of like the whole framework, and that's okay. That makes sense. That's what they're around day to day. So
Sure.
this last quarter we gave out actually everybody, but myself. So we at the time we had 6 W-2 employees, and so counting myself. So the other 5 all got awards, and I kind of started developing why I thought each one should get that, and then I went over it with Hannah and kind of looked at it, and then we so essentially presented it, told a story about each one, and gave them they get a certificate, and then we take a picture. So, and then I think a gift card of some, I'm trying to remember now. I think it's like a $25 QT gift card or something that we do.
Well, so yeah, I like the show The Office. Still watch it. I think
Yeah.
me and all the like middle school girls or whoever the main demographic is that watches that show. And Michael Scott, he had bought himself a mug that said "World's Best Boss." So you could do
Yeah.
that, right? You could buy yourself a coffee mug said "World's Best Boss," and that's your award. That's what I would do.
Right.
Thank you guys for this.
Oh,
I love it. So you guys you're doing that quarterly. Are there kind of like day to day, weekly, any ways that you're keeping those values top of mind a little bit, maybe even more consistently?
so I think my internet's getting a little bit choppy. It's me, not you. But I think what you talked about was how do we keep them top of mind?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're getting signs right now to put around the office.
Nice.
We try to talk about them regularly in the field. Hey, that's a great example of X, or Vivi, that's a great job like pursuing excellence here. Man, that was a really cool way to try that out, Ryan. Like way to exude that core value. So we do try to talk about those. We'll actually use them to make decisions, which when I say actually, it wasn't that the point of them, but we do.
A lot of companies don't,
Um,
man.
I'm saying as if it's surprising, but it's like, why do you have them if they don't work as some sort of filter, right? And we're doing our first commercial new construction right now. And we're going back and forth on it. Do we send the quote in? Do we not? And I think it was Hannah at some point said, let's take the risk. That's our core value, right? This is what
Mhm.
we do. Isn't this who we are?
That's cool.
And then we were having a day last week. I think it was Tuesday, and that job didn't like it was ready. Another one didn't, and so I just remember calling Hannah, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what we're gonna do tomorrow because everything I'm checking on right now is not ready as they said it would be, and so it's that moment of when you say, okay, it's only 2 o'clock. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing. This is adversity. Let's keep pushing. So there's times when we'll say it to each other as a way of making a decision, as a way of driving forward, as a way you mentioned the thing about, how do we just, it's a filter for how we interact with customers. Hey, does this fit our core values? You know, and so we don't have probably the best way to keep it top of mind because a lot of those things I just said are kind of organic, but we do try to, our project managers, myself, Hannah, we're kind of trained to call those out when we see them in people.
Yeah, I mean, you have it living in the day to day, which is that is the point of it. Otherwise, why have it, right? It's got to serve some kind of function.
Yeah.
Shane, I'm glad we dove into this, man. We've been kind of punting on these values till this episode, but this is great. Is there anything as we wrap this episode up that you want to add?
Just that I wish we'd galvanized some of this sooner.
Hmm.
We kind of play, I'm not, I'm not great at finishing things. A lot of time I'm an idea person, so I'll throw a bunch of stuff on paper and then it'll sit for a long time. Throw a bunch and edit it and it'll sit for a while. And eventually when we just said, we're going to turn these into verbs, we're going to figure this out, we're going to do it. It's been really helpful for us. It's been really helpful. So that's
Love
it. So if you don't have them, do them yesterday.
Yeah, I think the turning them into to verbs, I think is a huge takeaway for me. The quarterly awards, people recognizing and making sure everyone's kind of in that mix to get those awards, using it as a filter. You said that should be obvious. It really isn't a lot of times, right? We think, well, it's a set value, set a mission statement, but then what do you actually do with it, right? So using it as a decision making filter, and then also something to almost lean on for motivation when things are hard or scary or whatever in the company. Um, Dude, I think there was a lot of value in that. I think there were a ton of takeaways here. I
Awesome.
appreciate you, Shane. Looking forward to the next episode, brother. Thanks for opening up about all that.
Absolutely. Look forward to it as well.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.